Hey fellow music nerds, it's your nerd-in-chief, Sarah Wallenhuff, and ready for number 2 of our Music Nerd video series, all about music theory and how to figure out how music sounds like it does. Today I thought we'd talk about intervals. We talked a little bit about it in the last video about pitch class set theory and how do you calculate what intervals are going on in a piece of music that make it sound the way it does. So let's take a look at how do we typically categorize the distance between two notes, known as intervals. How do we measure that and why we should care? If I start with a C and I go to the same C and I don't move, we call that the perfect unison, or P1. So as you can see from the get-go, we count where we start as number 1 in music in counting intervals. So if we go to C to D, that would be a second. C to E, a third. C to F, can you guess? Starting at C is 1, 2, 3, 4, it's a fourth. C to G is 5, and C to A is 6, C to B, 7, and, whoops, sorry about that, C to C, we call that an octave, or an eighth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. See that? So that's the quantity. Now, to figure out the quality, we're going to find that your unisons and your fourths, fifths, and eighths are all what we call perfect. C to D. If you remember in our last video, we talked about counting semitones. How many semitones are in between C natural to D natural? If we look at a piano keyboard, we see there's C, then there's a C sharp, and a D. So we're actually skipping over one other note in here, or you might say there are 2 semitones between this. That means we call that a whole step. And what a whole step can also be called is a major. So 2 semitones would equal a major second. Now, how about a third? We have a C and we have an E. Now, if you look at our piano keyboard, we could have an E flat, possibly, right? Could have an E sharp, but that would go to F natural. So we have a choice of E or E flat. Now, looking at that stacked wise, like a sandwich, would you say that C to E is wider or C to E flat? C to E is going to be slightly wider by 1/2 step, right? It's 1/2 step bigger. So our C to E is our major third. If it was C to E flat, that would be a minor third. So let's label this with major third. You notice I'm using capitalized for major. Now these are perfect and perfect, and let's look at C to A. That's quite a big jump, isn't that? All right, so let's see. Taking a look at our A here, we could go to A flat, which would just lower it by 1 semitone, right? So would you say that C to A is a bigger space by semitones, or C to A flat? So C to A is slightly bigger, right? So since we have an A natural going on here, that would be major sixth. Now, last one, any guesses on this one? If C is our bass, B is way up here, right? We do have an option of going to B flat. B is bigger on our stack, so that's going to be a major. Check that out. Major 7. So, starting with C as our root, we have a perfect unison. major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, and octave. So we have a D and an F natural. Taking a look at our keyboard here, D and F natural. Now quantity, what is that? So starting on D is 1, 1, 2, 3. So it's a third. Now is it a major third or a minor third? Let's see. So D to F is one way to look at that F. We could potentially go to F sharp, couldn't we? Before switching notes. So which is bigger? Is D to F bigger or D to F sharp? Well, D to F sharp is bigger, right? By 1 semitone. So D to F is smaller. So it's not going to be a major third this time. It's actually going to be a minor third. I'll just put that there. So lowercase 3 for minor. Now, just for contrast, what would that sound like with an F sharp? This one, as we determined, if this is a minor third, this is a major third, right? Slightly bigger by 1 semitone. Let's hear the difference. Ah. So one sounds a little darker, and the other one sounds a little brighter. Is that a major second or a minor second? Well, here's F and here's G. We do have the option of calling this G flat, right, before changing letter names. And if you notice, remember what we said about seconds, there's 1 semitone in between them, meaning this is what? Slightly bigger, so it's a major second. It's a whole step. What would it need to be a half step or minor second? That had to be a G flat. So if you remember last time's video, we talked about pitch classes and basically numbering things according to semitone. You can do that the same method with intervals. It would be called an interval class. So a minor third in interval class notation, let's see, let's just count semitones. So D to F, we have 1 semitone, 2, 3. So the interval class of a minor third is the same as 3. Interval class 3. Any ideas what a major third would be? Because it's only 1/2 step bigger, that would be interval class 4. How about the minor sixth? Let's count. So we have G to E flat. So we have 1 semitone, G to A flat, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So a minor sixth is interval class 8. So either one works the same way. It's just basically a way to calculate how many semitones are in between one note to another. Now the big question, why should you care? Well, as we noticed, the sound between a major and a minor interval makes all the difference in the world in what a piece comes off sounding like. You know, so what if we had Twinkle Twinkle Little Star? This is the original song we all grew up with. Now, if you notice the key points, we have A to E is a perfect fifth, right? E to F sharp. Is that a major second or a minor second? Well, let's see. E, F, F sharp. That's a major second right there. And back to the E again. E to D is a major second. This is a minor second. This is our half step right here. This D to C sharp. And then B, here's our major second, and back to A. What if I took away those sharps? In other words, I put the half steps in different places. So now the half step is in between the E and the F, and the half step now is between the C and the B. What do we get? It's a very dark twinkle twinkle. That calculating how far a note is jumping to another note makes a big difference in how we hear that line. It can come off sounding a little happier or a little darker, just depending on how far we jump from one note to the next. An easy way to categorize the sound of these distances is to put them into two separate groups, one of consonances and one of dissonances, and they mean what you think they might mean. Consonance is a distance that is pleasing to our ear. It sounds more restful, like we've arrived somewhere. Dissonance clashes. It's a distance that doesn't blend well, so it creates tension. In the olden days, back when Europe was into single line chant, we began by introducing a second line that moved in parallel, and this was called organum, or parallel organum to be exact. Composers started looking at it and going, hey, well, if we can have two lines going at the same time in parallel, what if the second line was moving in different notes? And the interaction between those two notes created consonances and dissonances, which was the push and the pull of the flow of the music. So again, consonances gave us the sense of ease, dissonances propelled us forward because of the tension. So let's just take a look at the way that the old masters might have looked at these intervals. A unison was considered, of course, extremely restful. You can imagine that because it's the same note. What about a second? Oops, sorry about that. A second was, what do you think? Let's take a listen. Pretty clashy, right? So a second was a dissonance. A third, either major or minor third, listen to both of these. This was considered consonant, either one of these, because they blend. One just blends a little darker than the other one. How about, let's skip the fourth for a second, and I'll explain why in a second. The fifth is extremely open. It's perfect. So, of course, it's a consonant. In fact, it was called a perfect consonance. Let's look at both the minor and major sixth. So there's minor, and there's major. These were also considered consonant, either one. All right, how about the seventh? So the minor seventh would be slightly squishier, stacked up. Here's the major seventh. Very clashy. The seventh was dissonant. And then last but not least, perfect octave. A perfect consonance. And then our major second. Both are pretty clashy. So again, that was the dissonance. So to summarize, the unisons, fifths, and octaves were perfect consonances. The regular consonances were thirds and sixths. The dissonances were seconds and sevenths. Now, what about fourth? Why did I skip that? Well, there's a very special property about the perfect fourth. Let's take a look at that for a second. Let's listen to that. It's an interesting interval. This perfect fourth was considered a dissonance, and the reason being, but depending on how you stack it and where it sits with the other notes, it can either sound really clashy or it could sound good. So let's take a look. So we have a 1, 4, 5 setup here. So we have the chord of 1, 4, 5, 1. Very typical progression. And again, I'll go into more detail later on about what all this means, but suffice it to say, this 4 right here, we don't, even though it does sound consonant, we don't rest on it. This isn't a resting chord. We want to move on to the 5, which then pushes us to the last one. So suffice it to say, the fourth in the olden days was considered a dissonance. And these days it's considered a consonance, but you still have to be careful with how you use it. So by using this little catalog, this idea of consonance versus dissonance with intervals, we can have a deeper understanding of when you want the push and the pull of the music to happen. Well, that about does it for today's video on intervals, calculating the distance between two notes and why it matters, consonance versus dissonance, and just the interaction between those two notes and what it does to our ears, and then how we perceive the flow of music in response to that. Right? If you have an idea or a question you'd like answered, feel free to leave a comment or send me a message. Give you a shameless plug, I have an awesome recording I'm raising money for, so you can go visit isupportnewmusic.com to find more info on the project. I have an ebook that has clips from the music we're hoping to record, a video of me playing my awesome dragon shaped light up electric violin, so check it out if you feel so inclined to support that project. I have some awesome gifts for you. Alright, well, have a great week and we'll see you next time.